The Alexander Cell Saga, Chapter C, 6C, North Thames Gas and all that. I sold the house when my son and I moved in with my mother and father. I started looking for work back in the cathodic protection field and looked at a position at Dungeness B nuclear power station, where the water cooling system was supposed to be protected by internal cathodic protection. I was unable to take the job and care for my son properly, but the visit and viewing of the internal cathodic protection left me in no doubt that it could not be made monitored in the way that had been planned, and I later learned that the whole system had to be replaced due to corrosion. The divorce of my first wife was completed, and I married my second wife to solve a mutual problem of being single-parent families. I immediately started looking for work and was offered a job as a cathodic protection technician with Atkins Inspection Services, working on the North Thames Gas survey that my mother had told me about earlier. We rented a house in Wokingham and I started back in the industry. Mike Foskett was the corrosion engineer for North Thames Gas, based at Staines on the west of London. There were two divisions, east under Bob Waterhouse and west under Gordon Atkin. Nothing to do with Atkins Inspection, at least not to my knowledge. He told me that for the past year they had been conducting a survey, a condition survey, to determine the condition of the network of high-pressure gas pipelines that were now of sufficient age to justify concern. British Gas itself was developing an intelligent pig, which was an internal pipeline vehicle carrying a computer which stored information gathered by probes which measured the magnetic flux of the pipe wall. This could measure the wall thickness and say whether metal loss was internal or external. Mike Foskett had written a paper about the newly conceived notion that by switching the cathodic protection off, it would be possible to measure the polarized potential of the pipeline. He had the idea that the difference between an on voltage and the off voltage would denote where corrosion was taking place. Wherever the off potential was below 850 volts, 0.850 volts, they would excavate and find corrosion. North Thames Gas had just had a mainframe computer installed, and the survey results were fed in to be stored and plotted. The computer had been programmed to produce a graph showing the on voltages, the off voltages, and another line showing the difference between the two. After some months, it became apparent that the plot of the on voltage and the plot of the off voltage ran parallel, and the third plot was almost a straight line. They had been unable to make anything of the few deviations from the parallel voltages and had quietly discontinued making the third plot. We discussed my feelings on cathodic protection, and he gave me permission to use the Alexander cell on North Thames gas sites, so long as I did it in my own time and at my own expense. I had told Atkins' inspection of the cell so that they could not make any claims for the intellectual property rights, and they had politely been disinterested. I was engaged on this survey for over 4 years and used the Alexander cell at hundreds of locations which were later excavated for examination of the pipe. It was never wrong, but on a couple of occasions the results were inconclusive, so I feel okay to claim 98% success. This picture is of me on that contract. During this period, we walked hundreds of miles over pipelines, taking thousands of readings daily with the cathodic protection system switching on and off. We developed procedures to overcome most of the technical problems and designed equipment to make life easier and the survey more practical. It was a period where I could study at ground level the subject that had become my prime interest, and I carried out many experiments to develop a complete mind picture of cathodic protection and the corrosion reaction. In the later stages of the survey, when the excavations were being carried out, I became adept at locating coating faults to the extent that I was called to other teams' sites if they could not find anything of significance. A young technician called Ed Littlewoods joined my survey team and became very interested in the Alexander cell. He said he would like to handle the business side of it, and I thought it would be great, and thought it had great commercial potential. His father owned an iron foundry and was interested in the manufacturing side of the venture. They redesigned the shape of the cell and produced a very different looking model which his father could easily manufacture. We then approached one of the government-supported enterprise boards which gave financial support to new products. He submitted the design, and after a while they turned down our application for assistance. They had recommended that we patent the invention to protect our interests, and Ed had made inquiries as to the cost. We had no money between us, and it would have cost about £14,000 for the first 2 years if we hired a patents attorney who is a specialised solicitor to carry out the patent procedure for us. I said that we should carry out the patent ourselves and began to prepare the description, etc. After a few days, Ed came to me and said that he had engaged a patents agent to do it for us and that he would pay for it himself. He then said he wanted 50% of the rights in the device, and he had approached a solicitor who'd drawn up the required document. I refused to sign the document on the grounds that a few years of my life had resulted in the device and only a few weeks of his time had been devoted to it. I did not want the destiny of my invention decided by somebody else. He had nothing further to do with the subject but threatened legal action to recover his costs I said that I had never agreed to any costs, and that was the end of it. Mike Foskett was interested in the development and passed on my information to British Gas Research and Development Department, known as ERS, which was based at Killingholme, Newcastle upon Tyne. Both Bob Greenwood flew down to see the Alexander cell, and we discussed the whole issue. Unfortunately, he did not come on site to see it in action and was limited to a small demonstration in a sand tray in the offices at Slough Depot. He was interested but did not offer an opinion. Mike Foskett was a member of the Institute of Corrosion Science and Technology in London and asked me if I would prepare a presentation on cathodic protection monitoring and the Alexander cell. I did this at Russell Hotel Conference Centre in North London, and it was attended by over 120 corrosion engineers from all over the country. I knew that there would be opposition to my views on the subject, so I set up a series of demonstrations to confirm each point of the argument. I also set up a video film that I had taken on site to confirm that the demonstrations were related to site experience. The presentation proved that existing procedures contained so many variables that the readings were totally unreliable. Jim Gosden, who was then the chairman of the committee for British Standards Institute Code of Practice for Cathodic Protection, CP 1021, was present. He stood up at the end of the presentation and said that he was satisfied that I had proved the current practices were in error to the degree that he would withdraw CP 1021 for review. During this period, I was continually on site. I was able to confirm any points that were disputed during discussions. Most of the people with whom I was talking worked in offices, and some of them had a habit of blaming operator error for any readings that did not fit with their theories. Some were genuinely ignorant of what happened on site, but others obviously chose to ignore it. A glaring example of this happened immediately before and during the presentation. I was at a pipeline cathodic protection test post near Camberley, where the gas pipeline shared a common pipe trace with a products line belonging to Esso, which had a CP test at the same location. I was taking I met a corrosion engineer who introduced himself as a graduate